Hey, welcome to Southern Soul Studio. I'm Tony Morris, the host of Southern Soul. Thank you so much for joining us. We're in season 3 now, so stay tuned for the next episode. You may be wondering, why is the show called Southern Soul? Well, the southern part is because originally I'm from Alabama. And the soul part is because, guess what? I'm a psychic medium. And on Southern Soul, together we'll discuss a variety of spiritual topics and also have some stories about my career. So stay tuned for today's episode of Southern Soul. Home sweet home. There's no place like home. Home is where the heart is. But think about it. Is the place where you live, is it decorated, is it designed to create a truly happy heart or a happy type of energy? It's where you live, it's where you spend a lot of your time. You want it to project a very positive type of energy. The colors, the fabrics, the textures, the materials, the furnishings, everything adds up to the big picture. And on today's episode of Southern Soul, we have a special guest, Steve Thompson. He's a very noted interior designer, and he also happens to own Cabana Home in Santa Barbara. And Steve's going to join us a little later to share with us some of his intuitive insights on creating the ideal, magical, positive space that you'd be living in. But before we bring Steve out, one of the things we always do on Southern Soul is we take a few questions. So let's take a few right now. Okay, the first question. Traffic stresses me out. Tell me about it. What can I do from a positive mindset to tune it out? Well, if you live in California, that's a very big question, because just getting on the 405 or the 101 or the 230, whatever, you're almost going to be guaranteed there's going to be a little bit of stop and go. The one thing that you certainly don't want to do if you're stuck in traffic is meditate. You don't want to be, closing your eyes and, kind of having a kumbaya type of moment in a car. But one of the things you can do is you can do some deep thinking. I really do try to do that. Like if I'm stuck in traffic, I think of it as luxury time. Like, oh, hey, I've got this time. I can actually do some deep thinking. Or I can just be talking to the universe or talking to spirits. I talk to my grandmother, my late grandmother, my late grandfather, friends who have passed on to the other side. I kind of use that time as just to talk with them, because our day-to-day lives can be so busy. So hey, maybe the universe is giving us a gift when we're stuck in traffic. You never know, right? But whatever you do, don't let it turn into road rage. It just isn't worth it, right? So thank you for that question. Next question. Can a person go into another spiritual realm from the physical realm? Oh, absolutely. And you don't have to be a psychic like myself in order for that to happen. I'm sure all of you have had dreams, right? That's an example of how you can leave your physical existence and go into another spiritual realm, having a dream, plain and simple. But let me take it one step further. I'll give you a very personal story. My grandmother, when she was alive, she was living in an assisted living facility. My grandfather had already passed on, and my mother went to visit her. And when she came to visit my grandmother said, "Well, did you see your father? He was there with the boy." And my mother kind of scratched her head and she said, "Mother, Daddy's been gone for a couple of years, and my brother is still alive. He's living across the street. And she said, no, he was here. And my mother relayed that story to me, and then I shared with her, I said, what happens is when older people get closer and closer to their transition, it's quite common for them to go from the physical form to the spiritual world. So in essence, my grandmother was already making contact with the other side and seeing my grandfather and having moments with my grandfather to get ready for her transition. And so when I told my mother that, I think it kind of shed some light. It surely helped me understand a whole different concept of, again, where you're able to go from the physical world into a spiritual realm and then back into the physical world. Okay, let's see, we got one more question. What could be some reasons why a person has trouble going to sleep? Any advice to correct that? Okay, I'm not going to go into your bedroom if that's what you're asking me to do, but I think I know what you're saying. Some stress, whether it's stress or we've got so many things on our mind, we toss and turn, we punch the pillow, we fluff the sheets, just to try to get comfortable so we can go to sleep. There's a number of things, without having to take a sleeping pill. I'm sure some of it does have to do with diet, so you may want to pay attention to your diet. Are you, eating high sugar before you go to bed? You probably don't want to do that. So there's some common sense things as it relates to diet, for sure. One of the things I enjoy doing before I go to bed is I try to just do some stretching exercises. Some people actually do some yoga poses because it helps to relax their muscles and to kind of free whatever pent-up stress they might have. The other thing, and this is interesting, think about your sleeping chamber. Is it truly a relaxing space? Or do you have a whole lot of busy activity going on in that room? Meaning some people have a home office in their bedroom. Well, that's connected to work. That's connected to your workspace. That energy will latch on to you still if you're trying to go to sleep. So you may want to double rethink the whole idea of having a little home office right next to your nightstand. It may not be such a great idea after all. And yes, that brings us to the whole idea of furnishings. Furnishings in your bedroom, whether it's the fabrics or the photographs or the pictures on the wall, the draperies, the window treatments, whatever. Some of that really does add up to trying to create a serene space, a place where you can actually enjoy sleep or go to sleep. And that is a nice segue to our special guest today, Steve Thompson. He's going to be with us here in just a second to share with us some great intuitive insights on how to create that wonderful positive living space. We have a special treat for you on Southern Soul. Steve Thompson, who's an interior designer and he also is the owner of Cabana Home in Santa Barbara, is going to be our special guest today to share some very intuitive insights on how you at home can create your own very special space, right?
Well, I certainly hope so.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Tony.
Some people have the creative design gene. They can walk into a room and just like make magic happen. I'm not one of those people. So
that's why I have a job.
There you go.
That's a good thing.
That's why we need folks like this one here sitting across the table from me.
Thank you.
Ready for a few questions?
You bet.
Because I know the viewers are really excited about hearing what you have
I'm
to
excited
say.
about being here. I've watched the show, so it's very fun to be a participant in it. So thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's take some questions, okay?
All right.
Interior designer, I know that's, I just envision creative and, just these creative juices flowing. So my question to you is, when a client comes to you with a project, do you see that project like a blank canvas?
Well, of course, as a designer, we would love to see them all as blank canvases, but unfortunately, they come with frames already. And sometimes the frame is the specific need that the customer has, or specific colors that they like. They may have a special need for a physical disability perhaps, but they always have parameters that we work with them.
Budgets, maybe?
Budget is one of them, and probably my least favorite, but all of us have a budget. Some people's are bigger than others, but that is a major component of it, of course.
Okay.
So,
Okay. The next question, when approaching a specific space, do you consider the type of energy that the client wants to embrace or have in that space or that home?
it's such a great question because sometimes they don't even know that that's a part of
really?
the equation and how they're going to live in it. And I heard you say earlier on your segment about how we the things we put in our bedroom, say to relax or be able to sleep, or the rooms that we're going to work in, they all require different things. There are certain colors that we'll use that elicit in your mind or in your brain, colors that will elicit your ability to think more clearly and to process things. And bright colors like yellows and greens, bright yellows, create that atmosphere. But it's not a bedroom atmosphere, it's an office atmosphere.
Right.
So it really does make a difference in the kind of energy that we're going for with the customer.
Yeah. So that's why that famous fast food restaurant has the golden
Arches.
bright arches. Okay,
Like
I did mention the name.
Feed my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, and more.
Yeah. Can you give me some examples of how you've created certain types of energies for a project or two?
Well, sometimes the energy is not just for the individual because there's a spouse, a husband or a wife or a partner, and they have different ideas of how the house ought to live how it's going to look. And so there's a lot of intuition that goes into it. There's a lot of listening that goes into it. We oftentimes, I think I mentioned to you before, where I had a husband and wife that were coming together from their second marriages, and they each had an idea very specific about their own collection, and the other person had an idea about how great their collection is, and I was supposed to merge those two together. And this is a second marriage, so they're both trying their best, but each person pulled me aside separately, and she said, he's going to tell you that my things are horrible, but his things are really horrible. And I was like, oh my gosh.
So you're in the middle.
I'm in the middle, and so I think, okay, I can handle that. And then about 5 minutes later, he pulls me aside and he said, her things are so terrible. I don't know how you're ever going to do this. And so we were already set up for what I think most people would call a disaster course. And but it worked out so well because one thing we did in order to create the harmony, which is what we were looking for, it was about balance and scale. And it's not just about color, it's not just about feng shui, which is another concept in interior design, but it was about the layering of color, texture, space, the size furniture. If you put this size chest here, then you put that size lamp and this size picture over it, and it creates a balance. And so when we did that with their things and mixed them without their own restrictions for how they thought things should be put together, and they let me do it, and that was the smartest thing I think on their part because it kept each of them from being in conflict, and it was going to come up to me to make it right. But in order to do that, we used all the things that we learned in school about balance and scale and layering. And we layer light, we layer texture, we layer furniture, we layer color. And those things together done right can really make a really harmonious space.
Wow, I think that answers my next question. I was going to
Okay,
ask you
good.
how important or not are the types of colors, fabrics, materials, etc. in creating the ideal space.
So important. It's, in a bedroom, clearly you would use softer fabrics, things that don't have texture that you would roll over on and like, what am I doing? I'm sitting next to a porcupine. And what you want is the soft fabrics there. Maybe in a family room, you would want fabrics, one that are more serviceable, two that have more texture in them. So it does matter how we do it. So.
I've heard the word flow, like how a room should flow. Does that make sense to you, or is that just something that's been overstated?
Well, it does flow, and a lot of flow is about just the practical matter of it. I mean, do I really want to walk around that sofa every time I try to get up and go to the television, or want to leave and go to the kitchen? So flow is very important. But there's another kind of flow too, a flow of energy, and I think that may be what you're getting at. And we've had some experience with that too, and that comes a lot from the study or the practice of feng shui, and about certain aspects, placements of doors or windows where they don't allow energy to flow through the room. That can flow into the room or flow out of the room, but not flow through the room. And so that's sort of an interesting concept. So if you think you want to open up your view of your house to whatever the view is, and you open it up completely, but you opened it up from the outside of the house to the middle of the house to the front of the house, you've created a flow of energy that's sucking all the energy out of your house. And that's the study of feng shui. And so we employ some of that, but not the formal principles of it. We think that if we have a great view, I want to open that window up to see it. And part of my enjoyment of my house is seeing the best view possible. And usually that's by opening up the walls.
If you've got these views, with whether it's mountains, oceans, or even forest or whatever.
Even when we don't have a view, sometimes we'll create a view by just outside the window, putting up a tall fence and then planting it with green or an espalier of roses or something. So it makes it something to look at. But I don't think that allows the energy really to flow out of a room. So that's where feng shui and I probably differ somewhat. It's a practical matter. I did do a property in Santa Fe, and they decided they were going to sell the house and do another house, and they had a feng shui person come out, and they walled up a whole wall of French doors looking at the Santa Cristo Mountains. And I came over and saw the house, and I was so floored by it. But I thought I would let a little energy go to have my view back. So it's just
like you said earlier, it's about balance and scale. Some things you work with,
and that's a balance in energy. So I'm just more about the overall aesthetic beauty. So when I'm home in a beautiful space, then I feel very comfortable. I relax more, and then I can be ready for the next day.
Yeah, that energy
so my home
really
is where I get my energy back.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
This is interesting. Have you ever walked into a room or a home and you just sensed really negative energy? And if so, how could someone rectify that situation?
Sometimes the negative energy is between the occupants.
Oh my God!
And it's not always about the furniture.
Okay,
so it makes me wish I'd have either taken much more psychology in school or know a lot more about what you do. But it's a very fine line that we walk. And when there's negative energy in the house, it always affects the customer and the client. And so that's something that we have to be very skilled at. And the only way we can get past it is to listen very carefully, ask a lot of questions, take lots of notes, and come back and present something that gives the flow back to the house, gives the balance back to the house. It's usually really about the balance. I mean, just because Aunt Mary had a great dining table that set 16 people doesn't mean that's going to work in your one-bedroom apartment. And sometimes we have to give things up that we're holding on to, and that creates conflict. In the house, and maybe the partner doesn't want it in the house because it's too big, but because it was Aunt Mary's, they got to have it. So, how do we deal with that?
We got to find a place for Aunt Mary's for now.
Yeah. So how do we deal with it? So it's always about trying to.
So heirlooms can sometimes be a.
They can be a bone of contention between two parties, and they can also be something that just they don't work in the house that you're in.
Yeah.
So the alternatives are few for that.
Yeah. So to rectify it, it's about balance and
it needs to
letting go of things.
Yeah, it needs to fit and letting go of preconceived ideas. And sometimes we can hopefully skillfully present the alternative to it because we haven't seen just your house, but we've seen many houses.
Right.
And we've seen this problem perhaps before, and we can show you a couple of options.
Yeah, that's great.
It's all about options and then giving the customer the choice. So it's not really about what we do or what we think. It's more about helping you get where you want to be.
Exactly.
So that's, I think
he knows what he's talking about.
That's folks. Our business. That's how we do it.
So. Okay, one more question.
Try me.
What 3 key points for our viewers would you like to share that they can remember in creating their own positive energy space? If they had 3 nuggets that they were going to lead this show with about creating their own space, some basic things that they can employ on their own.
Yeah. Well, one is, starting with the things that you really love, what you really must live with, what really means the most to you. And that beyond anything that I might say or somebody else might recommend that you do with it, I would say the most important thing is love what you have, love being with your things. And that creates the first part of the house. Secondly, don't be afraid to paint that piece of furniture or change the fabric on it in order to make it more current. I think that's an important thing. I'm not big on throwing everything out and making you buy all new stuff. Let's work with what you got. We like to shop at your house first. And then once we've exhausted that and we've shopped Tony's house and we get it as far as we can get it, then we have placeholders, meaning we need to come in and put a new chair with that sofa and a new lamp on that table and then sort of fill in. So,
a little mix and match.
Yeah, just work with what you've got first, and if the things you love, work with what you have. And then 3 is, rely on someone like me, because we are there for you. That's what we do, and we can save you a lot of time, most often a lot of money, because you don't make as many mistakes when you have somebody else looking out for you. We're able to floor plan it and see if it fits. That's really important. It's very hard to do I think if you're shopping on the internet, how's it going to fit in your house? I know how it's going to fit in your house because I've measured your house and that room and that piece of furniture. And so they're putting the human aspect back into interior design, I think, is so important.
Yeah.
So those are my 3 nuggets.
Yeah, those are great.
And maybe 1 or 2 extra.
Hey, bonus points. Well, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for sharing all of this. I mean, who would have thought, seriously, that this table, this chair, can all really impact the way we operate in our day-to-day lives? But, our home, like I said earlier, is where we live, and our home is where the heart is, and you want to feel good about where you live. So the things that Steve just shared actually make a whole lot of sense, because everything is energy. And when you create positive, healthy, happy energy, it's absolutely gonna rub off in your day-to-day.
It makes you want to go home to your house. It makes you want to be there and live in your house.
It's your sanctuary.
It is. And one thing, as I was noticing this table and these chairs, which are Arno Saarinen, which are very famous mid-century pieces of furniture, but I really like them mixed with antiques and be comfortable using it. If this table fits and it's contemporary and your sofa and chairs are very traditional, mix them together.
Don't be afraid.
I think it's the most interesting and intriguing to see people do that. So I have a lot of confidence in that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Steve, for
Thanks
being
for
our
having
guest.
me.
I really appreciate it.
I enjoyed being here. Thank you all so much.
Stay tuned, folks. We got one more segment of Southern Soul, and that's the Little Red Wagon segment. We'll be right back. Thank you, Steve Thompson, for being our special guest on this episode of Southern Soul. I mean, talk about a creative genius. How he can take all the fabrics and all the textures and all the client's needs and wants and create something absolutely magical is absolutely mind-blowing. And so thanks again, Steve, for bringing your magic to Southern Soul. Now, this is my favorite part of Southern Soul. It's the Little Red Wagon segment. And think about it, when you're a kid, Little Red Wagon was probably your first toy. You put your dreams, you put your aspirations, you put all the experiences that you wanted to have in your life in your Little Red Wagon. And by the way, I'm in the control room again, and I can't believe the producer and the whole production team is allowing me back in here, because this place is where the pros work. This is where they create their magic. And I feel kind of, intimidated actually even sitting in this chair, much less around all this electronics and stuff. But I promise you, I'll let them handle all the fine details to the post-production work and all that kind of good stuff. But in the segment of Little Red Wagon, after Steve had such an incredible talk about, creating the right space for your home, or perhaps your outside area for that matter, if you have a patio or a garden. We're going to focus that aspect of your life today on this Little Red Wagon segment. This is where we get to play let's call it spiritual architectural digest, right? Spiritual architectural digest. We're gonna have a little bit of fun. So here, take out a piece of paper, got a little bit of homework here. Write 3 things that you really like about your current environment. That's right, your house, your apartment, your crib, wherever you live, Write down 3 things that you really like about your environment and put them in your little red wagon. Now, step 2 is identify 3 reasons why you like those 3 aspects of your environment. You know, could be a number of reasons why, but write them down and put those in your little red wagon too. Now for step 3, what you want to do is identify 3 ways in which those 3 things that you really like about your place where you live and the reasons why, identify 3 ways that you can take how it makes you feel and how you can put it into your daily life, how you can make your daily life even more positive based on where you live, based on your space. Because let's face it, a man's home is his castle, or a woman's home is their castle, and you want to be able to get the right kind of energy from it. And so what happens is the right kind of space with all that great positive energy is bound to rub off in your daily life. So identify 3 ways that it does. So have some fun with it. Thank you so much for joining us on this latest episode of Southern Soul. And until next time, keep rolling.
We are rolling.
You're sitting here feeling all alone, like all that was special in your life is now gone. But I've got sound advice that you should take to heart. When we leave here, life goes on differently, and the ones we love are still here even when we can't see. So listen with your being and you'll find the place to start, to feel some southern comfort in your soul. A new way of listening to the things that we know, that our friends and loved ones tell us life just begins again. So take some comfort in your soul, my friend.
Bill, one of the very first things he told me when we were doing the Little Red Wagon, he goes, because I was saying Little Red Wagon, he goes, Little Red Wagon.
Enunciate.
Yeah, versus Little Red Wagon. Just sounds blah, blah, blah.